What's going down, everybody? It's your boy. That guy, my high, tuning back in for another reaction. This one's by Scary Interesting. Shout out to Scary Interesting. This one's called Diving Gone Wrong, Horrifying Deep Water Incidences. That just sounds terrible, bro. Like, I ain't even gonna lie to you. The ocean is just such a beautiful thing and a scary thing all at the same time. You know what I'm saying? It's like space where you just gotta respect it. You can't do nothing but respect it. You know what I'm saying? Put some respect on the ocean's name. Anyways, let's go ahead and give a big shout out to all the members of the channel, and then we're gonna jump into this video and see what it's about, bro. Because I know it's about to be intense, so be ready. Anyways, Epic Service, Jamal, Keith, Christy Pope, Funny Farm, Manly, Misty Summer, Sniper, Trey 420, Driver Thoughts, Ryan Parks, Kara, Marie, Carrie, Mr. Pay It Forward, Happy Chick, Lynn Willow, Holla Girl, Taylor, Holla Boy, Marla, Diesel, Nick, Creatively Insane, Nicole, Aaron, Mama Dukes, Robin Lynn, Amy Jane Doe, Liz, Nugget, My Hood Life, and Gary Willis. Gang, gang, gang. That was pretty clean, actually. I gotta give myself a pat on the shoulder for that one. That was a pretty clean ass, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, if y'all want to join the people that you heard just get they names personally shouted out by your boy, think about hitting that join button down below. Got 3 different options to choose from. You could be a high member, a really high member, or the highest member. You dig? And if none of that fits your fancy, you're just like, nah, bro, I just want to subscribe and hit the bell notification. Dope, because that's free 99 and there's no excuses, and I appreciate it because it helps your boy out tremendously, and we trying to hit 100K one day. Okay, I want a plaque. I'm trying to get that YouTube plaque. You know what I mean? It'd be a glorious day when that happens. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump into this video, man. Again, shout out to Scary Interesting. Let's go ahead and let's do this.
Today's video, we're going to go over 3 open water diving incidents that really highlight just how poorly adapted humans are to deep water and to water in general. And not only are we not well adapted, but everything...
Like, that just sounds terrible. Open water diving means that there is no land anywhere near you at that point. You know what I'm saying? Like, not close enough that you're just gonna grab onto something and walk back up onto the land, bro. Not at all. That's no,
including predators is better adapted. As a reminder, if you have thalassophobia, this video might give you serious anxiety. For everyone else, viewer discretion is advised.
Man, I don't even know if I want to watch this, bro. I'm supposed to be in Jamaica by the beaches and the oceans here in like legit like 5 weeks, bro. 4.5 weeks. I don't know if I'm feeling this no more. Oh man, I'm gonna be already nervous about the ocean. Phobias and shit now.
Often regarded as one of the tastiest of the shellfish, lobsters are also one of the most expensive. Historically, they were considered a food that only commoners ate due to their availability and poor quality. In fact, when their population was larger, they frequently washed up on shore, making them one of the easier foods to catch. But because of their slow growth rate, their population has dwindled to just a fraction of what it was due to overfishing. They're also a bit more difficult to catch in large numbers and difficult to store to be kept safe to eat by modern food standards. There are some modern mass farming methods to catch them, like trawling with nets or using lobster pots, but there are certain lobsters that are still caught commercially the old-fashioned way. Certain lobsters, like slipper lobsters, prefer the crevices of caves and reefs, and so they are frequently caught by scuba divers with hand nets. The scuba divers will literally walk along the bottom of the ocean and then find and catch the lobsters by hand. On June 11th, 56-year-old lobster diver Michael Packard was fishing off of Provincetown, Massachusetts. His first dive of the day had gone poorly and yielded almost nothing, so at around 8 a.m. he dropped into the water once again to a depth of about 15 meters. But then just before he touched down on the ocean floor, he felt a massive push from behind, almost like he'd been hit by a truck, and then everything went dark. For a split second, Michael thought he'd been attacked by a great white shark because nothing else could possibly be that big. Then he felt around and realized that it was all soft muscle around him. That's when he realized he was in a whale's mouth. A whale had scooped him up from behind and was now trying to swallow him whole. Thankfully, he still had all of his scuba gear on, so he waited anxiously, not knowing whether he'd soon be crushed or if the whale would realize he wasn't food. About 30 or 40 seconds later, he felt the whale shake side to side, and then he started to see light. Then he saw bubbles all around him as the whale surfaced and spat him out. The last he saw of it was its massive tail dipping back below the water surface. Although he was shaken, he was thankful to be alive.
What?
Also on the surface...
Huh? Nigga, no. 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 Mm-mm. This nigga just got eaten by a fucking whale. What? What? I'm gonna have to reevaluate my whole life after that shit. Like, what would you do? Like, I don't even know what to say.
The boat and crew that Michael was with, who watched this entire thing unfold. According to the captain of the boat, Michael came flying out of the water feet first and then landed on his back. They quickly pulled him on board, thinking he had broken his leg, and then rushed him to the hospital, where they determined that it was only a dislocated knee. Other than that, he just had some bruising on his legs, and thankfully had no signs of any air embolism from surfacing
That's
so
some
quickly.
crazy shit.
He was released by the end of the day and returned to diving the following week.
Nigga, I'm not ever getting back in the water to dive after getting eaten and spit out by a fucking whale. The fact that you had some people there to vouch and verify your story, bruh, that's enough. Nigga, you was eaten by a whale. And then this motherfucker spit your ass out because he said you didn't taste good, bruh. Like, legit. Came up, shot your ass out. You landed. We pulled you out. He swam the fuck off like nothing happened. Like, nigga, no.
The whale that swallowed him was a humpback whale, which can grow to be as much as 50 feet long and 36 tons, and don't eat humans. In fact, this behavior is basically unheard of. It's thought that the whale mistook the bubbles from his scuba gear as a school of fish and then opened its massive mouth like it normally does to use as a net. Thankfully, once it realized he wasn't a fish, it spit him back out again.
He was like, he's a little metallic-y.
In October of 2003, 26-year-olds Tina and Gabe had a wonderful wedding in Birmingham, Alabama. For their honeymoon, they wanted to do something adventurous, and so just 2 days after they were married, they hopped on a plane to Sydney, Australia to do some sightseeing.
Nope.
After spending a few days in Sydney,
That's where they fucked up right there. You don't go to motherfucking Australia. Sorry, Australia. I love y'all. I appreciate all the support that Australia shows your boy. You dig what I'm saying? Because there actually is a small audience out there that likes my eye. You know what I'm saying? That we get along. We understand each other, bro. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not fucking coming to Australia. Y'all fucking everything kills you there. Everything is fucking can eat you, can harm you. It don't matter if it's this big or if it's that big. It don't matter what the size is, bruh. Shit, the smaller it seems, the more deadly it is, bruh. I'm just saying, I'm good. Australia, I got way too many things that could kill me.
they
dog.
left
I
for the
don't- I
West
don't
Coast,
like that.
where they planned to go on an excursion with the diving
And some
company
of it's
to
house
dive
held
the
animals
historic
and shit.
shipwreck, the Young Gala.
Fucking
On the 21st of October at 10 p.m.,
Fuck all
they
that,
arrived
bro.
at the coast and boarded the boat that would make an overnight sail to the dive site. By the time it arrived at 2 a.m., the couple was asleep in their bunk, resting for the dive the following day. Then at 9 a.m. on the 22nd, Tina and Gabe joined the crew and the other divers on deck to be briefed about the equipment and the dive route. Tina and Gabe both brought everything they needed except for a set of air tanks that they would get from the excursion crew members. Once they were suited up and ready to go, they hopped into the water with a group of 4 other divers to explore the wreck. But just a few minutes later, they swam back up to the boat because Gabe's dive computer didn't seem to be working right. He ended up pulling the battery out and repositioning it, at which point it started working properly, and then the two of them jumped back in the water. The shipwreck they were exploring was an early 1900s passenger boat that sank off the coast and has since become a popular diving location. It's located near a section of the Great Barrier Reef and rests between 30 and 16 meters deep. This means that it's accessible by recreational divers. After entering the water, the couple planned to travel down the anchor line, then swim across the upper section of the wreck, and then ascend a second anchor line back up to the surface. But moments later, Gabe was back up at the surface, and this time, Tina wasn't with him. Gabe called out, asking for help retrieving her, and then one of the crew members jumped into the water to go find her. The crew member eventually found her lying lifelessly along the ocean floor and brought her back up to the boat.
What the fuck?
Unfortunately, despite trying to resuscitate her for 45 minutes, Tina couldn't be revived. This was obviously an incredibly tragic incident for a couple on their honeymoon.
Dog, bro, that would be the most fucking terrible shit ever, bro. Oh my god. And bro, that shit is sad. Like, that makes me want to cry, bro. Like, I'm about to get married, and you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what I would do, bro. That's sad, bro. That's sad.
One second
bro.
they were in love and ready to spend the rest of their lives together,
Right,
and the next moment they were torn apart.
Torn apart.
However,
bro.
upon beginning an investigation
sad.
into the incident, things started to not add up. First, everyone on the boat was an experienced diver except for Tina. This dive is also known as a red dive because of its difficulty because of the strong current in the water in that area. Red dives are typically only recommended for advanced divers. Investigators questioned Gabe about why they chose to go on this dive and why they had turned down an orientation session, or why they had turned down having a guide with them during their trip. That in itself isn't necessarily suspicious. People are overconfident in their abilities all the time. What was suspicious was Gabe's behavior and his retelling of the events. According to Gabe, the couple realized how difficult the dive was almost immediately upon entering the water. The current was really strong, so Tina signaled to him that she wanted to go back up. Gabe signaled to her to inflate her buoyancy device so that they could float back up, but when she tried to inflate it, nothing happened. Instead, Gabe claims to have grabbed a hold of her and started pulling her, but while doing so, she accidentally knocked the mask off his face. He let go of her to fix it, and then when he could see again, Tina was 10 feet below him and sinking fast. And although she had her arms up trying to reach for him, Gabe couldn't get to her in time. It was at that point that he surfaced and called for help. The problem with this explanation is that not only was Gabe open water certified, but he was also an advanced diver, a rescue diver, and a specialty diver. This meant that it was weird that he wouldn't have been able to help her. He could have helped her inflate her buoyancy device, or, after she sank, gone to give her air. What was also suspicious was that there were inconsistencies in each of his retellings of the event. During the investigation, he would also ask to have his dive computer returned to him. This wrist-worn device tracks all the events of a dive, like depth and time. And when police refused to return the dive computer, Gabe got upset and argued with police and even asked for it a second time. It was later revealed that the account he gave seemed to contradict what the dive computer showed. His story also contradicted what other divers had seen that day. Upon examining Tina's body and equipment, the evidence was even more suspicious. It was determined that Tina had drowned, but her regular was still in her mouth. Her tank was also still completely filled with air, and her equipment had no faults. Based on all this information, this is the sequence of events a prosecution would later put forward. After re-entering the water the second time, the couple was seen hugging in the water. It was actually described as though Gabe was bear hugging Tina. It's thought that during the hug, Gabe turned off her air valve and then held her until she suffocated. Wow. After that, he turned her air back on and then watched as she sank to the bottom. His dive computer seemed to corroborate this because the ascent that you'd expect would be much quicker than what was actually recorded, indicating that he might have lingered to ensure that she was actually dead. In addition to this, supposedly, his dive computer had beeped before changing the battery. This wouldn't have happened had it not been functioning properly. It's thought that he had used this as an excuse to get Tina away from the other divers. The final piece of the story was a motive. Why would a newlywed husband have any reason to get rid of his wife? Why not just not marry her? Well, apparently according to Tina's father, Tina had mentioned to him that shortly before getting married, Gabe had asked her to increase her company's life insurance policy to the maximum amount and make him the sole beneficiary.
Wow.
In Australia, Gabe pled guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 12 months and a suspended 4-year sentence. After serving that amount, he was deported to the US, where he was arrested and charged again.
Good.
However, this case was thrown out by the judge due to a lack of evidence.
What?
It was also revealed that the prosecution's own witness, who was a diving expert, had changed his mind in the later stages of the proceedings. New evidence came to light that Gabe's experience was less than what everyone initially thought. The course that Gabe had taken was half the length of a regular course, and he had no rescue experience and almost no open water experience. The diving expert would later say that he had no hope of being competent. He could barely save himself that day, let alone his wife. In fact, Gabe had even required some help getting his equipment on the day of their dive.
Wow.
In the court proceedings, the judge would also block Tina's father from providing testimony about Gabe's supposed request to increase her life insurance policy.
What?
After his acquittal, a couple years later, in 2007, Tina's family noticed that the flowers and gifts they left on Tina's grave kept getting vandalized or disappearing entirely. This kept happening even after chaining the items to the ground. After telling police about these incidents, police recorded a video of Gabe removing the items with bolt cutters and throwing them in the garbage. It was so bad that he was later given a court order to stay away from her grave. But in recent years, in re-examining the case, it seems as though many diving experts are of the opinion that this was simply a case of individuals who should not have been in the position they were in, and their lack of experience ultimately led to a preventable death. However, Gabe's later actions are interesting, to say the least.
He got remarried and shit, watch.
Born in Florida in 1981, Nicholas Mavoli spent most of his adult life
Hold on, that shit's crazy. Finish this.
in New York, where he worked as a prop technician in film and television. Some of the more notable pieces he worked on included Gossip Girl and The Chappelle Show. He also had some aspirations of becoming a writer and an actor, and even starred in the independent film Exist. He was also a great athlete and a bit of a daredevil. This would eventually lead him to take up freediving, and then in 2012, he started freediving competitively. Shortly following his decision to compete, he got very good, very quickly. Within a year's time, he won the Deja Blue competition in the Cayman Islands. Then he won it the following year in 2013 as well, and wanted to place third at the Caribbean Cup. Then after that, he took bronze at the World Championships in Greece. At just 32 years old and still new to the sport, he was the first American to break 100 meters, or 328 feet of depth, in the constant weight with fins category. Later that year, he was looking to compete again in what is considered the Wimbledon of freediving, called Vertical Blue.
That would
This
be so
competition
scary,
occurs
bro.
at Dean's Blue Hole in the Bahamas, which is a 200-meter or 656-foot deep sinkhole. The entrance to the sinkhole starts fairly narrow, but then opens up to be 100 meters wide, deeper in the water. In fact, this sinkhole is the deepest known sinkhole on Earth, making it perfect for freediving competitions. In that year's competition, there were going to be 34 athletes from 16 countries that would be participating in 3 separate diving categories. First is something known as constant weight with fins. This is where divers swim down using fins and follow a guideline, but they can't touch the guideline except for switching from the descent to the ascent. The second is known as free immersion. This is where divers can use the line itself to pull themselves down, but they're not allowed to use fins. And the final and most challenging is constant weight with fins. This is the same as the first category, but without the use of fins to help swim. The goal for each of these is to swim as deep as you can on a single breath hold. And divers are so good at this that dives lasting 3 minutes or more are common. And bear in mind that they're swimming, expending energy the entire time. On the Friday of the competition, Nicholas attempted to break the national record for free immersion, which was 96 meters, but something went wrong during his attempt, and he had to be helped to the surface. When he did resurface, there was blood dripping from his mouth, and he was furious and cursing. On his way down, he thought he had blown out his eardrum and would therefore no longer be allowed to compete. Thankfully for Nicholas, it wasn't blown out, he just had some minor upper respiratory squeeze and he could continue competing. This is a condition where some of the capillaries burst at depth because of the pressure and is fairly common in freediving. Usually it just results in a bloody nose and isn't that serious, so divers can continue. On Sunday, he's going to try to attempt a different record in the constant weight without fins category, where he would try to get to 72 meters without any fins. Now it's maybe worth contextualizing exactly how deep and challenging this is. The average swimming pool is around 8 feet or 2.4 meters deep. An Olympic swimming pool is 10 feet or 3 meters deep. And Nicholas would attempt to swim 72 meters or 236 feet deep on a single breath.
Nope.
At around noon, just before his attempt, he was lying in the water on his back with his feet propped up on a noodle, trying to relax as much as possible. This would help him to slow his heart rate and his metabolism so he would use less oxygen. Shortly after that, he took a big breath and then sipped as much additional air as he could to pack his lungs to their maximum. Then at 12:25, he put his head under the water and started his descent. On the surface, his progress was monitored and announced to anxious onlookers, most of which were other competitors. Now another thing you might be wondering is how freedivers can descend and ascend so quickly without needing to decompress like scuba divers. This is because the gases that scuba divers breathe are under intense pressure, whereas freedivers take their breath hold on the surface before descending. This means that the volume of gas will be the same when they resurface. With that said, freediving still comes with a bunch of other physiological weirdness and potential health risks. Naturally, the human heart rate drops in response to the breath hold to conserve energy, but divers also undergo all sorts of other intense training to be able to hold their breath for as long as they do, because breath holding is determined by a combination of factors. First, there's how much air you can actually hold in your lungs. There's also how much your energy consumption is reduced. That's why divers try to relax as much as possible before a dive. Another factor is how well you utilize the oxygen you consume, so divers have to be very cardiovascularly fit. And finally, divers simply need to be able to tolerate hypoxia or lack of oxygen. To practice this, divers will train on a breath hold to build physical adaptations to the lack of oxygen as well as mental strength to the intense desire to breathe. And Nicholas was no stranger to any of this. He calmly swam down to 15 meters, 30 meters, 45 meters, 60 meters, and then at 68 meters, he seemed to hesitate. He stopped briefly, and then it looked as though he was going to ascend, and then just moments later, he seemed to change his mind, and then headed back down to the record 72 meters. All of the other divers watching this unfold realized that this would be a very challenging ascent. It would have been tough even without the hesitation, let alone now with this new obstacle. But 3 minutes, 38 seconds after Nicholas first dipped his head under the water, he re-emerged and ripped his goggles off. In order for a dive to be considered successful, the diver has to say, "I'm okay." And so Nicholas motioned it with his hand, but then as he started to say the words, they sort of gurgled out, and then he tipped backward in the water and passed out. He was immediately pulled out of the water by 5 rescue divers and then up to the physician on site. Right away, the physician could tell that there was something wrong with Nicholas's lungs. When they turned him on his side, blood poured out of his mouth and onto the dock. His pulse was also very faint, and then within 15 minutes, it disappeared entirely. The team quickly cut off his wetsuit and then went right into CPR. He was also given 3 shots of adrenaline in the span of just over an hour while they tried desperately to revive him. When they were unable to revive him, they quickly took him on a stretcher to a nearby hospital. Unfortunately, despite their best efforts, he was pronounced dead at 1:44 p.m. The cause of death was determined to be severe pulmonary edema. Another thing that occurs at depth is a fluid redistribution from the extremities to the vital organs. This can cause blood and fluid to pool in the lungs' capillaries. Fluid can then leak through the capillaries into the air cavities and cause damage to the tissues in the lungs and reduce breathing function. If this is severe enough, the hypoxia that can result can be fatal. Nicholas Mavoli was unfortunately the first athlete to die in competition in the 21-year history of Vertical Blue.
Dang.
Welcome to Scary Interesting. If you made it this far, I just want to thank you for watching.
Wild, bro. See, that's, yeah, no, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? I like to swim, you know what I'm saying? I'm not afraid of the water or nothing, but I'm definitely not diving into the depths of nowhere for no apparent reason other than to be like, yeah, I dove that far down. Like, nah, that's crazy. Nope. Shout out to all the extreme athletes that do crazy stuff like that, but that's not for me, man. I ain't gonna lie, that ain't for me. Anyways, y'all let me know what you thought about that down in the comments below. I'm gonna catch you on the next one. Peace.